Just changing something there. In case you didn't know, there is a Senate inquiry about ADHD happening at the moment, in that it's now open for submissions. So I've just pulled together some information, hopefully to try and make it easier for you to actually make a submission, because it's my belief that the more of us that can actually put in a submission about our own experiences about ADHD, the more information they have to actually make an informed decision. So I just want to show you one or two things. Most of this information has come from John Jordan Steele, who is a senator in WA. He is a disabled advocate and is doing some amazing work. And he's being a big instigator of making this actually happen. Just share screen for a moment. So basically, this is a Senate inquiry into the assessment and support services of people with ADHD. So what's actually in place or what is not in place. And basically it's our opportunity to actually give our own opinion and talk about what our own experience has been and continues to be. So just some things you need to know. The submissions are open only until June the 9th. So that's next Friday, a week's time. So I really urge you to get on and doing it over the next few days. Maybe you might find an hour or two over this public holiday weekend. There's two ways you can do a submission. You can actually either do use the parliamentary portal, which is the more secure way of doing it, and it's kind of suitable if you've got anything confidential. So I would urge going that way. It's very, very easy. All you do is create a My Parliament account. I will give you the link near the end of this presentation. Alternatively, you can send directly to the committee by email. But as I said, the My Parliament account is probably the better way to go. So you just set up the account and then they send you an email confirming your email, and then you can go from there. I'm also going to provide a link at the end, which is again provided by John Jordan Steele, where he's urging us to send an email to some main influencers in Australia regarding to the health service. I'll give you that link at the end. It's again a really useful thing to do and really easy. All you have to do is put in your name and email address. John Jordan and his team have done all the hard work. So just some tips for writing a good submission, which again are provided by John. Our submissions should really address what the terms of reference are. On the next slide, I'll go in and tell you what the relevant ones are for families to a large extent. You don't need to address everyone really in our situation. We just need to talk about our own personal experiences in relation to diagnosis and ongoing support in relation to ADHD in our family. We need to be relevant and highlight our own perspective. So it's important we tell our own story. We need to be concise, which actually might be difficult once you get started. So trying to keep it to no longer than 4 or 5 pages, and then starting with an introduction about yourself, or if you're representing an organization, and I know most of you will be talking about your own families. Trying to clearly emphasize whatever your key points are. So what John suggests is you actually write everything you want to say, and then go back to the beginning and actually write some key points or maybe bullet points of what you're actually trying to say. Outline not only what the issues are, but how the problems can be addressed. So if you have any suggestions for how things could be better, and remember, it doesn't matter how unrealistic they might be, it still might be a great suggestion somebody else hasn't thought of, or alternatively, it might be a suggestion that everybody thinks of, in which case they'll go, well, if everybody's thinking this, and it's obviously something we need to do. So please don't be nervous, or just write down whatever you think, basically. Only including documents that directly relate to your key points. So if you wanted to put in any supporting documents for anything, by all means do. And including information you'd be happy to see published on the internet. So just look after yourself. Don't put anything in that's too confidential. Be conscious of, showing too much information about your child, because essentially this information will be for public viewing. So there's a long list of terms of references, and I pulled out the ones that I thought would be more relevant for us as families. So what barriers have you experienced in relation to consistent or timely and best practice assessment of ADHD? I know we've all experienced issues with that. adequate access to ADHD diagnosis. So currently we know there's long waiting lists, but talk about those if you're actually in that situation, or if you've experienced delays maybe even 5-10 years ago, please share that as well. What support, if any, have you been able to access after your ADHD diagnosis? I know that's a common area of tension for a lot of families. It's really, really difficult to get support. What do we think of the availability of professional diagnosis? What training are they getting? And in fact, what attitudes do we have? I mean, unfortunately, I have actually heard stories where some professionals are still quite dismissive. It's very rare. Dismissive of ADHD and what parents' experiences might be. So again, talk about that. Have you been impacted by an gender bias when it comes to ADHD assessments? So it's very common for female students to be missed in primary school. Has that happened to you? Or in fact, the stereotyping of a male who doesn't have hyperactivity, and again, maybe not recognizing that it can still be ADHD. The access and the cost of medication, a big issue for all of us if we're dealing with monthly costs around medication, accessing medication, the regulations around accessing medication, and the regulations around how the pharmacies actually have to distribute medication can be all very problematic. And the aspect of some medications are included in the PBS and pharmaceutical scheme, and some may not be. That can cause you issues as well. What's your view on the role of NDIS and ADHD? Do you think it should be recognised as a primary disability? I think most people do believe it should be, and so if that is, please make that recommendation. The viability of recommendation for the AADPA practice guidelines. So the AADPA produced some practice guidelines. If you've got a chance to look at them or you have any opinion on them, please do share your opinion on them as well. A copy on my desk right here. I can share the link to it if that would be useful also. So just as a checklist, which is actually up on the My Parliamentary Inquiry website, just before you send your submission, checking have you actually commented on all the terms of reference. Well, as you can see from that last slide, if you're talking about your own experience, you're going to be. Is your submission long? Have you provided a summary? So if you find that actually you end up writing a lot on it, just making sure you have the key points summarized at the top. Have you provided your return address and contact details? Have you made sure that personal contact details are not in the main part of the submission? And if you don't want your submission published on the internet, have you made this clear on the front of your submission and told us why? So if you have confidential information in your submission, making sure to make that clear. Some links then that are really useful. The first one is how you the link to register for My Parliament account to allows you to actually make the submission. The second one is a cheat sheet that John has done up in terms of actually how to write your submission. I'm going to show you that in a second. He has a great web page. There's a link for that. And the last one then, the last link is that email I was talking about, to actually send an email to some Australian influencers in the health system. If you're going to do that, I would advise doing it sooner rather than later, to just again to put further emphasis on these influencers in terms of making their own submission before next Friday. So I'll just show you that one page I was talking about. Oh, here's it not. Thought I had it open. Okay, I know what I need to do. I need to open it. Okay, if she definitely does seamlessly does it, not really, but anyway. Okay, so this is a cheat sheet that John has shared with the link I'm talking about. So basically starts with giving you some instructions how to do it. And then from this bit here on, from the introduction on, what I'm suggesting is you copy all of that into a new Word document, and then just using the bold as places to start, because it's actually really hard to start from scratch. So basically assessing a diagnosis, this was my experience, and then thinking about some of those things if they impacted you. you weren't believed or supported by your GP, you had excessive wait times, you challenging even finding somebody, the cost of it, any barriers you had to diagnosis, any other reflections or thoughts you might have on accessing a diagnosis. So this is about your experience post-diagnosis. Did you have any support? Any problems? What was your experience accessing medication? Did you have any gender bias influences? Your thoughts on NDIS? And then at the end, if you have any recommendations for how things could be done differently. You might have a recommendation for maybe more support in the schooling system, more support for parents, more education. Just have a think about, he's got a few ideas there, but you might have some other ideas. Okay, so I'm hoping this will encourage you to actually get a submission in. I believe, don't stress about too much about it being perfect. Don't stress too much about writing beautiful paragraphs. Bullet points will be great. Just get something in if you can find the time over the weekend by the end of next Friday. Okay, good luck.